are you? And where are you going? What do you want?
Hello and welcome to this special edition of the Way to Wow shows on January 1st, 2025, starting out the new year right with a show talking about the history of New Year's Day and with some inspiration for the coming year. So had a few days off from doing shows the last week, but it's nice to be back, and I hope you had wonderful holidays, especially to all my Christian friends and viewers out there. I hope you had a very happy Christmas, and now it's New Year's Day, again, New Year 2025, and off we go into whatever this year might hold for us. I don't know about you, but over the preceding month, I took a close look at what happened and made plans for this year. And I'm optimistic that it's going to be a good year. I'm hoping that some long-standing challenges are finally going to wrap up. We'll see how cooperative other people are in that part of things. But nevertheless, like I said, feeling optimistic. I have my black watch tie on this morning, and a nice warm cotton and wool shirt because it's been on the chilly side here in LA. Although it's going to be it's getting warmer today and tomorrow. So like I said, I wanted to start out by talking about the history of New Year's Day. I think we sort of take it for granted. Well, January 1st, it's the first day of the new year. So, that must, that makes sense, right? And yes, of course it does. 1 second here. See, here it is, the first show of the year, and I've already forgotten to close my email. So in fact, having a New Year's Day celebration is perhaps one of the oldest holidays that has ever existed. And of course, the term holiday comes from the term holy day. So it was a day of celebration. In ancient times, there really wasn't such a thing as a secular, New Year's Day. New Year's was tied to whatever cultural and religious observances a particular group of people. I don't even want to say country, because that's really not an apt term for such times. But the earliest recorded New Year celebrations go all the way back to Babylonia, circa about 2000 BCE. So we're going back now more than 4,000 years ago, in Mesopotamia. And the Babylonians marked the spring equinox. So the spring equinox is one of two times during the year when the length of the day portion and the night portion of the year are the same, meaning 12 hours each. Now, if you're on the equator, if you live on the equator, you have an equinox every day. But once you move off the equator, there's only 2 days of the year when that happens: spring equinox and the autumnal equinox, the autumn equinox. And they happen around the 20th. Well, the spring equinox happens around the 20th of March, 20, 21, 22, right around in there. And in Babylonia, there was an 11-day festival called Akitu. And it basically celebrated renewal and planting, getting started with the upcoming agricultural cycle. So then, I'm going to talk about some religious traditions in a minute, but our modern day New Year actually comes from Rome. So not Rome, the city, but Rome in the sense of the Roman Empire. And originally, Rome celebrated New Year's Day on March 15th. And you'll see a connection to some other traditions in a minute. But it was later shifted to January 1st by Julius Caesar in 46 BCE. Okay, and Julius Caesar, he reformed the calendar. So the month of January is named after the Roman god Janus, which is the god of beginnings and transitions. And if you've ever seen an image of Janus, it's got a head that sort of a double-sided head that's looking back and looking forward. And so Julius Caesar established the Julian calendar, named after him, making January 1st the start of the year. Now, during the Middle Ages, when after Rome had fallen and eventually, not eventually, but it became the Holy Roman Empire, right? So Christianity, in essence, took over Rome. So January 1st was de-emphasized as New Year's Day in favor of different days, including March 25th, which was the Feast of the Annunciation, and December 25th, which was Christmas. But Pope Gregory the 13th created the Gregorian calendar in 1582, and this restored January 1st as the New Year's Day. And the Gregorian calendar was based on the solar year, so the 365 day year, really. Now, of course, the solar year isn't 365 days, it's actually 365 and a quarter days. Okay, that's why we have a leap year every 4 years in the what we now call the secular calendar. But indeed, the secular calendar really comes from Pope Gregory. And so the celebration of New Year's Day today on January 1st comes from Roman Catholic practice. Which is kind of interesting because the United States originally was a Protestant dominant country, and in fact, England, once Henry VIII broke away from the Roman Catholic Church, was a Protestant country as well. However, Protestants in general, as far as I know, retained the Gregorian calendar. And so Protestant practice essentially followed in the footsteps of Roman Catholic practice. Now, you'll see that's not universally true in Christendom. So looking at now some religious traditions of New Year's Day. So the oldest Western religion is Judaism, a faith that I'm familiar with, as any of you who watch the show knows. And in fact, in the Hebrew calendar, there are 4 New Year's days. Now, most Jews don't actually know that. And non-Jews, for the most part, don't know that either. Most Jews and non-Jews look at New Year's Day as being what's called Rosh Hashanah, or Rosh Hashanah, which literally means head of the year. So Rosh means head and Shana means year. And it's celebrated on the first day of Tishrei, generally in September, or generally in September. I don't think the first of Tishrei has ever actually, well, actually, no, it does occasionally go into very early October. In fact, it did this year, now that I'm thinking about it. So this is the only well-known Jewish New Year. Now, Rosh Hashanah celebrates the anniversary of the creation of the world. So this year we're in 57. Let's see, 57. I want to say 5785, maybe. And for people who believe in the in a literal, and for Jews who believe in a literal interpretation of the Genesis story, they believe that the world was created 5,700 and I believe 85 years ago. Now, that of course that doesn't comport with what science looks at, that the world, the universe is billions and billions of years old. However, there are many people who believe that the Jewish year dates from when creation was completed. Okay, so all of those billions of years of the world being created happened before the essentially the seventh day of the creation story. And by the seventh day of the creation story, the world was not only fully formed, but the first human being with a soul emerged. And so then we started counting the actual years in the sense of a 365-day year. Now, one of the things about the Hebrew calendar is it's a it's a lunar-based calendar. Okay, so the Hebrew year is roughly 360 days long, not 365. And as a result, I believe it's 9 out of 17 years, there's a leap year in which a 13th month is added into the year. And that's done in order that another one of the New Year's days, which is the first of Nisan, will always happen in the springtime. Okay, more specifically, it's so that the holiday celebrated in Nisan on the 15th of Nisan, Passover, what's better known as Pesach, happens in the springtime, according to how the holiday is described in the Torah. So the first of Nisan is the new year for the reign of monarchs, Jewish monarchs, but it's also the new year for the festival calendar. So in Judaism, there are three what are called the Shalosh Regalim, which literally means the three feats, but it means the three pilgrimage festivals, which are Passover or Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. Okay, so the calendar of those festivals actually dates based on when the first of Nisan occurs. Okay, so that's a second New Year's Day in the Jewish calendar. And then there's another holiday called Tu B'Shvat. Okay, Tu B'Shvat literally means the 15th of Shvat. Shvat is the month in which it happens, which is usually around January, February. And there are no numbers in Judaism. The Hebrew letters are used as numbers. And so two is comprised of the Hebrew letters Tes and Vav. Tes has the numerical equivalent of 9. Vav has the numerical equivalent of 6. And so together that makes 15. So Tu B'Shvat is the 15th day of Shvat. And it celebrates, it's called the New Year of the Trees. As a kid, I never quite understood why was there a new year for trees. And it's because there are certain practices with respect to tree-based agriculture that have to be observed based on, for example, when fruit can be harvested. So the first 3 years of a tree's existence, one is not allowed to harvest the fruit and eat it. So the tree has to be 4 years old in order for the fruit to be eaten. But it's not 4 actual years. It's the tree has to pass 4 Tu B'Shvats or a fourth Tu B'Shvat, and then the fruit becomes what's called Revis, the 4th year, and there's a certain ritual concerned with Revis, and then after that, the fruit is good to go. So Tu B'Shvat, again in January or February, is the new year of the trees. By the way, the first of Nisan generally happens in March or April. Okay. And then the fourth new year in the Hebrew calendar is the first of Elul. So the first of Elul is to animals what Tu B'Shvat is to trees. So again, certain animals have to be a certain age to be qualified for certain sacrifices that were brought in the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. And they have to be tithed, etc. And so the first of Elul was the new year for animal tithes. Okay, so you can see in the 4 new years, there are different aspects of Jewish life, and each one of them relates to a particular aspect. You can also see that in the first of Nisan, there was a predecessor to the Roman practice of New Year's happening on the 15th of March. The Ides of March, by the way. Okay, so and by the way, the New Year in ancient Egypt was also tied to the Nile River. It was also, I believe, in March, if memory is served. So you have all those different New Year's traditions coming out of Judaism. Okay, notice none of them are the equivalent of January 1st here, which is what we call secular New Year's Day. Okay, now I mentioned that January 1st is not universally recognized as New Year's Day in Christianity. So Orthodox Christians celebrate New Year's Day according to the Julian calendar, okay, on January 14th. Well, on January 1st in the Julian calendar, but January 14th in the Gregorian calendar, i.e. the calendar that we follow here in the United States. So Orthodox New Year, or Old New Year as it's sometimes called, is celebrated in countries that historically were followed Orthodox Christian tradition, such as Russia, Serbia, Macedonia, Ukraine, Georgia. I didn't look this up. I wish I had now, because of course the Christian church in Greece was the Greek Orthodox Church. So perhaps in Greece, New Year's Day is celebrated on the 14th of January. I can't say for sure. When I was a chaplain stationed in Okinawa, we had an Orthodox Christian priest, and indeed, New Year's Day was celebrated basically a couple of weeks after secular New Year's. And now, the way it's celebrated in the Orthodox Church is very different. We look at New Year's Day, we're popping champagne the night before, it's a big party and all this kind of stuff. Of course, Orthodox Christian New Year's is a religious celebration. It's tied to practices like prayer and those kinds of things. And in fact, the same is true of all the Jewish New Year's as well. Rosh Hashanah, for example, is marked by prayer. It's a happy time, but there's a solemnity to it because there's a judgment going on between Rosh Hashanah and the festival 10 days later, which is Yom Kippur. And so the way religious New Year's days and secular New Year's here in the United States are celebrated very, very, very different. Okay, hang on one sec. Just going to send a message to one of my viewers. And okay, now so then moving on to the Muslim tradition. So Muslims celebrate New Year's Day according to the Islamic calendar. Now, like the Jewish calendar, the Islamic calendar is a lunar-based calendar, not a solar-based calendar. And that's why, for example, Ramadan can happen anytime during the secular year, because since the year is basically about 360 days long, each year each Islamic year essentially starts 5 days earlier, and so Islamic festivals sort of rotate through the secular year. Unlike Judaism, they don't have, as far as I know, a leap year so that the solar and lunar calendars will stay roughly in sync. That's not a part of how Islam works. And so the Islamic New Year, which is known, I'm going to read it here because I'll get it. I'm probably going to mangle it anyway. With my apologies if I do so. So it's called Hijri New Year, or Ras al Sana al Hijriya. I'm hoping, hopefully, I'm saying that roughly correctly. I don't know Arabic. And it marks the beginning of the month of Muharram, which is the first month of the Islamic calendar. So I already mentioned about how the Muslim calendar is shorter. The Muslim year is shorter than the solar year, and so the festival, the New Year, sort of rotates through the secular year. And the Islamic calendar starts with the Hijra, which is the migration of the Prophet Muhammad from Mecca to Medina in 622 CE, which marks the founding of the first Islamic community. And Muharram is the first month. It's a sacred month in Islam. Okay, and similar to Jewish and Orthodox Christian practice, and in fact Roman Catholic practice as well, because in Roman Catholicism, New Year's Day is a festival day marked with prayer, etc. So Islamic New Year's is marked by prayer, reflection, spiritual gatherings. Okay, and so it is a religious festival. Now, for 2024, okay, the year just ended. Islamic New Year actually occurred on July 8th of 2024. Okay, so that shows you how it cycles through the years. Okay, so some non-Western faith traditions. Okay, Islam is kind of the transition, right? Because it's somewhat of a Western faith, but it's also a Middle Eastern and South Asian faith that's now spread worldwide. So Hindus, which live, there's obviously the largest Hindu population is in India, but there are Hindus throughout the world. So I counted fully seven different Hindu practices on New Year's Day. So it's, the Hindu faith is very diverse, just like Christianity, even and to a lesser extent Islam and Judaism. So depending on what region of the world Hindus live in, which particular tradition of Hinduism they follow, there is a different practice in terms of which New Year's Day they follow. But in general, New Year's Day either happens in March and April, or around what's called Diwali in the fall. Okay, so those are the that's briefly Hindu practice. In terms of Buddhists, so there are basically four Buddhist practices which with regard to New Year's Day, and I'm going to mangle these names again. My apologies. There is the Theravada Buddhists, which happens in April. There's the Mahayana Buddhists, which celebrates a Lunar New Year in February. There's Tibetan Buddhists, which celebrate in February, what's called Losar. And Japanese Buddhists celebrate New Year's Day on January 1st, right? So now, I mentioned the Mahayana Buddhists having a Lunar New Year, and you may say, oh, well, that must be the same thing as Chinese New Year. No, that's actually not the case. While there are some similarities to Chinese New Year and Buddhist practices, the Chinese New Year is really a cultural and national celebration marking the beginning of the Lunar New Year, and it's based on the Chinese lunar calendar. And it falls between January 21st and February 20th. So in 2024, it was on February 10th. Okay. And it focuses on family reunions, honoring ancestors, ensuring prosperity, good fortune for the year ahead. Okay. So it is, I wouldn't call it a religious festival per se, but it is different than the secular New Year's that we celebrate here in the United States. So, but for all of the secularism that I've talked about, many people look at New Year's Day as an opportunity to get a fresh start. And in that way, it's kind of like Jewish practice in the sense that Rosh Hashanah begins a 10-day period of reflection and repentance that ends with Yom Kippur 10 days later. And the idea is that on Yom Kippur, God has made a decision about how your life will be for the coming year. And so during those, what are called the Aseres Yemei Tshuva, which is usually translated 10 days of repentance, although it would be more accurate to call them the 10 days of return, meaning return to a closer relationship with God, right? One is examining his behavior for the previous year, making amends to people for wrongs he's done them, and then praying for a good year going forward. A good and a sweet year is usually the typical greeting you'll hear that time of year among Jews. So to bring a bit of an aspect of that to our new year for 2025, I looked up some sayings and short poems that I want to share with you that hopefully will inspire you to make the year 2025 the best year that you've had so far. Not the best year you'll ever have, because hopefully 2026 will be better and 2027 will be better than that, and so on. Although we all know that sometimes New Year's don't bring better, but we can at least start out with hope. And now I will say, I am not one who makes New Year's resolutions. They notoriously do not stick. There was a time when I made them. I don't think I fulfilled one ever. I am, however, very big on goal setting, as you may know. If you're a frequent watcher of the show, you know I've done a number of shows on setting goals. I did one the end of last year on advanced goal setting and talking about conditions of success, which I think are even more important than goals, because we're setting the standards by which we want to live our lives and working to become to handle our lives ever more closely to these standards that we've set up as our conditions of success. Okay, so hopefully these sayings and short poems will inspire you to work ever harder at your conditions of success. So hopefully, you created some conditions of success for this year, and mine are right here. Although just this morning I did slightly modify one of them, so I'll be putting up my new graphic for my conditions of success and goals for 2025. I'll be doing that just a little while after the show is over. And you can see I've got I think I've got 9 or 10 there, but you don't have to do that many. I've been doing this a long time, so I work to challenge myself. But even if all you have are a couple of conditions for success for the coming year, that's terrific. So here we go with some hopefully, like I say, inspiration for you. So the first one is Benjamin Franklin, right? The great Benjamin Franklin, one of the founding fathers of the United States. And this is his advice on beginnings. Okay, so he says, be at war with your vices, at peace with your neighbors, and let every new year find you a better man. I think so. Benjamin Franklin was known for writing Poor Richard's Almanac, which was filled with this kind of very seemingly pithy, but actually very deep advice for us to take in and really think about, how can I make this a part of my life. So I think I'm going to read this again because I just think it's so good. Be at war with your vices, right? The things we're doing that are wrong, at peace with your neighbors. And I think he doesn't mean literally just your neighbors, the people who live next door to you, but neighbors both in your community, in your country, in the world. And let every new year find you a better man. That's the goal, right? To get better. Okay, excuse me. Okay, so that's Benjamin Franklin. Next is a short prayer for the new year by Alfred Lord Tennyson, okay, the famous English poet. And he says, a simple, hopeful invocation. Let us, with a gladsome mind, praise the Lord, for he is kind, for his mercies I endure, ever faithful, ever sure. So this is, I think, especially for those of us who live religious lives, this is a wonderful, very simple prayer that can really help us focus in the coming year. Right. So let us, with a gladsome mind, right, with a mind of gladness, of happiness, praise the Lord, for he is kind, for his mercies I endure, always endure, ever faithful, ever sure. It's very easy, and I know I do this, to get into the thinking that when something bad has happened to me, that God has abandoned me, he doesn't care about me, he's punishing me, and that's not true. Like a loving parent, God wants me, he wants all of his children to be better. And sometimes, in order to help us find a path to being better, God has to bring difficulties into our lives, right? So we struggle against them and we learn and we grow, right? So that is Alfred Lord Tennyson's prayer for us. Okay, next is a proverb from Ecclesiastes, which is, of course, in the writings portion of the Hebrew Bible as well as the Christian Bible. Okay, and it says, whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. Okay, so a half-hearted effort is not going to bring you success in this world. If it's worth doing, it's worth doing right, it's worth doing with enthusiasm. And if you find that you have a lackadaisical attitude toward a task, maybe it's time to examine, is this a task I really should be or need to be, or really should be or want to be doing? Maybe it's something that's not a very good thing to be doing, and that's why you're kind of going, I don't know if I really want to do this, I'm not so excited about this. Okay, now let me say, by the way, that A couple of days ago, I was invited to a party from long-standing friends of mine. And as I'm getting dressed and ready to go to the party, I'm doing my typical thing, which is I'm thinking, oh, I got to go to a party. I got to drive there and this and that and all of that. And I always think that before going to a party. And of course, once I got there, I had a wonderful time, met some very nice people I hadn't met before, saw some people I hadn't seen for a couple of years. The last time I was able to attend the party, and left the party feeling just really great. Got a big hug from my host before I left. He's such a sweet guy. You know, an inspiring man. He and his wife have been married for decades. And it's really a pleasure to watch them interact, and to see how genuinely my friend Bruce really loves his wife Terry. It really was a special moment to see them together, and so one of the things I was aware of doing is taking an extra, minute to, am I dressed appropriately for this event, so that I'm not, so that I'm showing proper honor to my host and hostess, and that sort of thing. So, I'm not saying that every time you're feeling reluctant to do a task, it's not something you should do. Sometimes it is something that we should do. And so if we're feeling reluctance, we need to understand why, and nonetheless make the effort, right? Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. Okay, the next is a short poem by Eleanor Fargione, I believe it's pronounced, called Morning Has Broken. Now, if you are of my vintage, this is going to sound familiar. I'm not going to tell you why in the beginning, because I want you to hear it and see if you can guess it before I tell you, okay? But here's her poem, Morning Has Broken. Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the word. Now, it has an almost hymn-like quality, and obviously it's talking about renewal and fresh starts, which is a great theme for New Year's Day, for January 1st. Now, again, this hopefully this sounds familiar, especially if you are a music aficionado like I am. Now, morning has broken like the first morning. Okay, I know I'm not a good singer. Don't worry. You're not insulting me if you're just thinking to yourself, "Oh, please stop." Okay, I'm stopping. But that's the tune to which a very popular and well-known singer in the 1970s sang this particular poem, and that singer's name was Cat Stevens, right? And it was this was a very popular song by Cat Stevens, and he borrowed the poem from Eleanor Fargione. So if you're looking for something to inspire you for 2025, maybe break out if you have old Cat Stevens records. I know he eventually converted to Islam, and he took on a Muslim name, and I don't remember what that name is. I want to say Yusuf, but I could be wrong. But this is Cat Stevens before he had his religious conversion, and the song is a great song for New Year's Day. Okay, so I've got two more for you. One is another short poem, this one by Emily Dickinson. So you may not have heard of Eleanor Fargione, but you probably have heard of Emily Dickinson, one of the best known poets of all time. Okay, and this poem is called On the Threshold. Okay, so we never know how high we are till we are called to rise, and then, if we are true to plan, our statures touch the skies. I just think that's so profound, right? I think one of the hardest things in our lives to do is to see ourselves accurately. I think we either put ourselves down and underrate ourselves too much, or we overrate ourselves and are guilty, if you will, of hubris. So to have that balanced perception of ourselves is a constant battle for us. No, I don't want to say battle, but a constant challenge for us. Okay, but the idea behind Emily Dickinson's poem is to understand, I think, our potential, right? So we never know how high we are till we are called to rise. And then, if we are true to plan, our statures touch the skies, right? So this is, I think, a call for us to challenge ourselves, to take on hard tasks, and to see how well we can meet those challenges, okay? Because we may not go as high as we hoped, but we're probably going to get much closer to touching the sky than we may think. Okay, the last one is a quote from Goethe, the famous German writer and philosopher. And it's called "Begin Again." Okay, and this is a salute to my very long-standing friend Louis Fantasia, who was actually awarded a medal by the German government for his work in helping people better understand Goethe and his writings and philosophies. Can you imagine being decorated by a country for doing something like that? So that's Louis. Sometimes when I see him, he'll wear the medal pinned on the lapel of his jacket, and good for Louis. So this is Born Again by Goethe. Whatever you can do or dream, you can. I'm sorry. Whatever you can do or dream, you can begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Begin it now. Okay. And this is the quote I want to end the show on, because this is hopefully beyond all the celebration, and maybe you're having a little bit of a hangover from too much champagne last night. This is what this is the blessing I hope we can all enjoy for the year ahead. Where whatever you can do or dream you can, begin it. Just get started with it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Begin it now. Okay? Don't worry if you aren't sure whether you can do it. Don't worry if you think maybe I don't have the resources to do this, the money, the time. Don't worry if you delay starting until you have the right circumstances, or worse yet, the perfect circumstances. You will never start. You will never begin. Boldness has genius. So be bold this year. Understand your conditions of success and be bold in getting started working toward them. So I thank you so much for joining me today. The first of the Way to Wow shows for 2025. Wish you a new year for you and your loved ones of good health, of prosperity. I hope to see you often. I hope that these shows will be a source to help you live the life that you want to live. That's what the Way to Wow shows are about. What are you? And all of a sudden I went up on Wow. Where are you? Where are you going? Anyway, you saw it in the intro. So I killed my profound ending. Oh well. So be it. But I hope that these shows will help you throughout the year. If you have challenges, reach out, let me know about them. And perhaps I can do a show on a topic that will help you address that challenge. Okay. If there's something that I can help you with, you have questions, comments, you can always drop them in our social media. The answer I give, if it's within my area of expertise, could possibly benefit other people. If it's something private, you can always email me. My email address will be in the show notes as well. So I wish you a wonderful rest of the day. Tomorrow is my every other week show, Jiggers' Place. Okay. And it's at 5 p.m. Pacific time. And we're going to be talking about starting the year off right start with the three things to focus on for good physical health. Okay. And by the way, I think good mental and spiritual health will come as well from focusing on these. So we'll have a cocktail. Again, start the year off right in the afternoon, and we'll be together again. So I hope you'll join me tomorrow at Jiggers' Place. I've remodeled Jiggers' Place a little bit. So, you know, if you want to see that, you'll definitely have to tune in 5 p.m. Pacific time. And then next week, we'll be back to our regular schedule. 10 a.m. Pacific time Monday is my show, Trusts and Estates Weekly. And I think I have a guest. Yes, my guest is Craig Redler, and he's going to be talking about Cook Island Trust. This is a particular type of asset planning, protection planning that Craig specializes in. So I hope you will join me for that. And then on Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, I'm going to be talking about lessons we can learn from the Battle of New Orleans. Okay, which was a battle in the War of 1812. So do tune in, and then we'll be back a week from today for the next edition of, for this year's first edition of People Making Money. So again, wishing you a wonderful rest of the day, and hopefully you will be able to enjoy it with family and friends. And signing off as I always do, Marie, darling, you are my bell. Courage with boldness. Boldness takes courage. Courage at all times, my friends.